Welcome to a new edition of Overcome Out Loud with Charlie Smith. This podcast is dedicated to sharing the stories of people that have overcome adversity in their lives and have developed a skill set of being able to share that experience courageously and vulnerably with us to give you a little bit of a roadmap out of whatever you're dealing with. You know, today, too many people are suffering in silence. And so I'm privileged and honored to have conversations with very courageous and vulnerable men and women all over the country, all over the world, that are sharing their stories. And today I want to introduce our audience to Barak Swarttz. Barak is the founder of Grit, which I just love, gaining resilience in time. He's a high performance strength and conditioning coach for professional athletes from all over the world. He's based in Israel. He stayed up a little late in the evening for him. And I just want to welcome Barak to Overcome Out Loud, man.
It's so awesome to be here. Thank you, Charlie. It's cool. I'm sitting over here in Israel. You're over there in the States, and just being able to connect remotely like this. Once again, it's just a reminder of how powerful sharing your story is online. And I'm really glad to be here. I'm excited for our discussion.
Yeah, I mean, just by way of introduction, so the audience can know. I mean, Barak and I got introduced actually through Wayne Selden Jr., who's playing for the Knicks right now, and so Wayne had posted a clip of a video that you put out about the things that you're doing and launching and your journey through your own adversity. And I was so drawn immediately to it. I've watched it a bunch of times, and Wayne, you know, who will be on hopefully during the All-Star break or right after the season, lived with me in 2016 when he was training for the NBA combine. And then ultimately, as you know, yeah. So he and I lived together. He stayed in my house with my son and I while he was training for the combine. And I watched him go through his journey of, you know, pursuing his dreams relentlessly and all the setbacks he's had with, you know, the knee injury and then not getting drafted and then going into the G League and just grinding and finding his own grit. So I was so thrilled when I heard that he had landed in Israel and had success. And, you know, he obviously credits you with a big part of getting him through his stint over there. So that's kind of how we came together. And it's really cool how people get connected.
That's right. I don't want to take too much credit with Wayne last year. He works really hard, and the kid he's awesome. He's just such a good dude. I helped him a little bit, but I think Wayne's work ethic and determination got him to where he is. And if I was able to be a little bit a part of it, but I'm super happy about that. But I don't want to take too much of that credit. He's awesome.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, I think we all need mentors and coaches, and you know, there's just at little points in our lives as we're struggling, or you know, look, he was in a new country. I mean, you know, just having people that supported him and encouraged him and could be around him. I mean, all those little things help us perform better. So, you know, let's get into a little bit of your story. So I know you moved to Israel when you were 6. You're a college basketball player. Can you share a little bit about your journey and kind of the origin story of how you got kind of started in life and what it was like for you growing up in Israel playing basketball?
For sure. I was born right outside of Boston. I have an older brother, 2 parents. Both of my parents are actually their careers. They're rabbis. They're both one's Reform, one's Reconstructive rabbis. So I grew up in a very culturally Jewish household, and that took us to Israel when I was 6 years old. We moved there. We didn't actually make citizenship. My parents wanted my family and our family to get an experience living in Israel. And we moved there at a very interesting point in time in life. It was during a very difficult war in the Middle East. And so we were going back and forth from the States during those 2 years. And we ended up going back after I was in 1st and 2nd grade. And those 2 years, I really think set the stage for my passion for living in Israel, which I'll get to in a second. And we went back to the States. Israel's where I first started playing basketball. I started playing basketball in 6th grade here and went back to the States. Soccer was my sport. Baseball was my sport. And then basketball sort of became that biggest passion for me. And I played in high school. I was injured most of my time going into, I played in high school twice. So I was at a public school for 4 years, and then I did a postgraduate at a prep school in Connecticut because I was dealing with some physical adversity, just being hurt so much in my career. And I wanted to just get a shot at playing college basketball and just being able to put a uniform on. And going into college, I played 2 years at New York and 2 years in Boston. That's some 2 small Division III schools. And these injuries basically sidelined me for most of my career. And I was playing a lot of rehab and not a lot of basketball. It's kind of like what I tell people. And so once it was from my junior year in high school up until the end of my, you can call it college career playing, I spent a lot of time thinking about how I can utilize those experiences just being hurt, those experiences not reaching my peak as a as a basketball player, as someone who wanted to play in the NBA like Wayne, and someone who wants to play professionally like Wayne. And I studied marketing, I studied business management, and just really not related at all to what I do today. And after college, I started to work at a tech company in Boston. I was selling email marketing software after doing some social media stuff, and got to this point where I realized what I was doing wasn't serving any purpose in life. And it was bigger than basketball. It was bigger than work. It was about finding something I'm passionate about. And I thought about those 2 years I mentioned to you in Israel, and that career playing basketball, and how I can combine those passions of Israel as a Zionist and also basketball as a career, but being able to work in basketball and help other athletes not have to go through what I went through dealing as an athlete. And so I am now an Israeli citizen. I moved here last year, and I've worked for arguably one of the top clubs in Europe, from Maccabi Tel Aviv. I worked there 2 years ago as a volunteer assistant. I volunteered my life there for a year because I knew that in some way, shape, or form that would be one of the best moves for me if I wanted to get myself a career here. And I am still here now. I'm on my second season with Ness Tziono, which is a team outside of Tel Aviv, which is where I trained Wayne last year when he was here. Last year we won the FIBA Europe Cup, which was the first FIBA Europe Cup title in Israel. And I've seen and experienced a lot of really highs in a very short career. I'm only 26 years old. And grit is essentially, I started making some video content with a friend when I was in the States before I came here. And the story about me being hurt and utilizing that time of being this injured athlete is basically the reason I do what I do today. And this acronym of GRIT, which I came up with when we were filming Gain Resilience in Time, is the story of my life and the story of how I see fitness and how I want to help individuals more than their physical attributes in the weight room per se, but also making them tenacious human beings and really gritty human beings.
Wow, what a remarkable story. There's so much there, especially as it relates to pursuing your passion. Take me back. And I think this is, for a lot of people, really important, is those formidable years for you. So you're a young high school athlete, and you see all of your teammates that are having the success that you want to have. They're playing, regular minutes. They're starting, and you've been working since you were young, and you really want to do that. And these injuries kind of take you out of, in a way, take you out of pursuing your dream the way that you see other people doing it. And I, having a son who played competitively in high school, his 3-year varsity starter, played a little in college, but spent a lot of time injured early in high school. And the physical recovery, just getting into the physical therapy office, and it was all knee related for him. He had a shallow groove in his knee, and so his kneecap kept slipping and caused some bone. And anyways, lots of really hard rehab, some surgeries to reconnect his kneecap. But the emotional drain, that kind of, not just getting up and going to the gym. And I know I've heard you talk a little bit about the fatigue, the emotional fatigue of having to rehab, but it made you stronger. But how did you deal with that? I think probably, how does the 26-year-old Barak look back and help the younger Barak get through those times, that emotional drain of knowing that things aren't going the way you want, but you're going to do the work to get through it? I think it's a challenge for a lot of people, man.
Biggest challenge ever.
Yeah.
Probably one of my favorite questions, because the 26-year-old Barak thinks back on how I really attacked this. And I want to mention that I have an older brother who, alongside my parents, who did an incredible job. All three of them raised me very well. And I think that I matured at a very early age. I say that because there is a sense of delusion that I think every individual needs to have in order for them to actually go after what they really want to do in life. I believe in delusion for sure. I also believe in the balance between reality and delusion. I'm saying that because when I was younger, I wanted to be in the NBA, like every basketball player who started playing. And as I grew up and I was exposed more to the pool of talent and reality of basketball that was around me compared to a average, debatably non-athletic Jewish kid from Boston, was not going to make it to the NBA. And when I accepted that role at an early age, I knew that my work ethic wasn't going to change. I would work as hard as all the people who wanted to go to the NBA. But I knew that at some point in time, it just wasn't going to happen. That's the card that you're dealt. So when I was being sidelined and having to watch my peers go through their successful career, whatever you want to call it, I went through it because I realized think from my brother and from my parents and the people that I was put around. You're a product of the environment you're raised in, for sure. I believe in that. And I was allowed to understand, and I convinced myself to understand that if I just spend every single day just trying to get better, brick by brick, whether it's a little bit of rehab, whether it's a little bit of mental toughness, whether it's a little, and look at the big picture, that at some point in time in life, there has to be a return on investment for this. I believe in karma. I believe karma is practical, and I think good things happen to good people. And I know that the work ethic that I will apply out of this process of just constantly being injured will have an impact on other aspects of my life. Me being a better person, me being a better brother, me being a better son, me being a better teammate. Because when you go through adversity and you go through these repetitions of when things aren't going your way, you just become a stronger person. Your foundation becomes stronger. And I know this is the 26-year-old Barak saying this looking back, but the thoughts that were going through my head back then were, I cannot allow myself to be the reason that I'm not getting better. Because if I don't do my rehab, then I can only point at myself for being the reason that I'm not getting better. I wanted to be the person that at the end of every single day, when I was doing everything I needed to do, from wearing a plastic overlap brace for half a month, 23 hours a day, and that 24th hour was for stretching and showering, that if I missed one day of not wearing that brace, I would actually fault myself. It was this weird mental game of being competitive with myself and not allowing me to be the reason that I wasn't getting better. I couldn't be the reason of not getting better. I wouldn't allow it. And this work ethic, this sense of being habitual, I think made me more of a routine human being and more of a routine individual, more organized and more goal-oriented. And it's crazy to say that at 16, 17, 18, this was my approach. I wasn't thinking about it to this, in depth at that point in time, but I was thinking more so like, man, Barak, like if you don't do your rehab exercises, it's on you. That's it. Period. End of story. Black and white. And going through the process, I remember a lot of people were teammates, friends, name it, Barak, to just give it up. Like it's not meant to be. And if I had said if I had said yes to them and listened to them, I would look back and one, I wouldn't be here right now because I wouldn't have continued this journey. And two, that work ethic would be the same thing I would do when I get rejected for other things in life. And I don't accept rejection. I think that's part of going through adversity and being gritty and developing resilience. So I wasn't thinking about how can I be the most resilient person at 16. The only thing I was thinking about was how do I make this an opportunity to just become better at something. And my goal, of course, was still to play. But that's how I look back at it. And I think it's the same approach I would take now and I will take in 10 years and in 15 years, which is, there's this whole cliche saying of everything happens in life. Everything happens for a reason. But my whole thing is everything happens for a reason, you don't have to be content with those reasons. And I didn't want to be content with just being okay. I wanted to be content with trying to do my best every single day and then seeing what the outcome would be from there.
Wow. So inspiring. And you're right. I mean, it happens for the reason we give it, right? So we have the ability. And I think what I heard so profoundly from you is you decided that this wouldn't define you, that the reason that you were going through this was going to be for something great, not that you were a victim of it, not that it was a mess, not that you were going to struggle to get through it, but that you were going to decide the reason. And the reason may be the NBA, the reason may be career in sports. You didn't know exactly what the reason was going to be, but you weren't going to let the world define the reason. You were going to define the reason. I think that's, when I talk to people in the world today that are struggling, it's like, you have to take the pen to the story of your life. You can't give it to the kids. You can't give it to the teachers. You can't give it to to the other people that you're comparing to. You have to take the pen. You have to decide what you want to write and what the reasons are you're going through. And it may just be, as you said, it may just be to get through this the best I can, and to set some standards for myself. And that's what I heard you doing, is you decided the reason was going to be for something great. You didn't know exactly. You were still pursuing your dreams of the NBA, but we all are the authors of that story, right?
I want to, you made me think of something. First of all, I agree 100%. Like I want to be able to die on my own sword for sure when it's all said and done. And back then I was thinking, okay, there's two ways I can look at this. One, I can ask God, why me? Why am I always getting hurt? I work hard. I listen to doctors. I listen to the protocol. I do all my rehab. I'm a good kid. Like I'm a good person. Why me? Why is it me? Or I could just accept reality and think about, and this is seriously what I was saying to myself at like 17 or 16 years old. I was saying to myself, none of this makes sense right now. None of it. it doesn't make any sense because I look at the people around me who may not be as dedicated or committed to something as I am, yet I'm still being the person being hurt right now. But, and I have this conversation with myself still today, Charlie. It's like, I was thinking to myself back then, there has to be at some point in time, a light at the end of the tunnel. There needs to be a reason that this is happening, and it will be exposed one day. And at 26 years old, I look back on the past, 10 years of my life. And I'm sitting here right now in Israel training some of the top athletes of basketball in the world. And I look back and it's like the light is sort of starting to shine. It's still a little unclear to me, really. It's still a little unclear because I love basketball so much and playing basketball so much to the point where I thought that was it. But when I look back at the sequence of events that have taken me to where I am, it's all because of one thing, and it's because of basketball. And if I had given up on basketball, the idea of basketball, which is my biggest love, I wouldn't be sitting here. And so the light has started to shine for me, which is exactly alluding to what you just said, which is like, I wanted to be able to pen my own story. I wanted to write it for myself. And I'm glad I get to go to my deathbed and say, like, I never listened to anyone else who was saying, don't go this way. I did it the way I wanted to. The way I wanted to. It didn't end up the way I wanted to. I wanted to be an NBA basketball player, but it is what it is. I'm still trying to make a passion and career out of what I still love, which is basketball. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And look, I'm very close personal friends with George Mumford, who was a mental performance coach with the Bulls and the Lakers. And he wanted to play in the NBA, but he became a heroin addict. And then he turned that addiction into a mindfulness practice. And that mindful practice led him to, courtside seats for 6 or 7 NBA championships. He wasn't playing in them, but he was witnessing them and contributing to them being achieved. And it's like you just said, we don't know where the road goes, but we're going to stay on it. It's not the end of the road. Some of these things are just bends in the road, but the idea for us is to stay on the road with a commitment and passion. 100%. And I will tell you that I founded a platform called My Life, My Pen, and I'm committed to giving people the pen to continue to write the story of their lives, man. I'm going to send you a batch of those to Israel, one for you, and then one for some deserving people that you work with to be sure that they continue to own the pen and write the story of their lives, my man.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome.
Amazing. For sure. There's a concept there's two concepts in adversity training and resilience that I want to talk to you about. One is conscious competency. So the idea that, knowing why we're good at something, I think self-reflection is really important, but most people, including myself, I had a lot of trauma-based experiences growing up. So I was a victim of violent child abuse. I became a drug addict and an alcoholic. So I had success on the outside, but I didn't like myself on the inside. So self-reflection was hard for me because I thought if I looked back, I would only see the bad things that happened to me until I changed the glasses that I had. And I looked back and I saw, what were the lessons that I learned? I'm not a victim of anything. I'm a survivor of these things. I'm not an alcoholic and a drug addict. I'm in recovery and I did something to change it. So the lens that we look back at is really important, and looking at the things that made us good at what we did so that we can repeat them. That's kind of that conscious competency. It's like, I'm good at this, like tying your shoes, right? When you're little, it's like these 2 pieces of string hanging out of my shoe. What am I going to do with them? I don't know what to do with them. Then you learn, rabbit round the hole through the thing, pull it. And now you can tie your shoes without thinking about it. What I heard from you was, kind of really becoming consciously competent about the things that you did when you were young, perseverance, getting up and doing what I needed to do, no matter how I felt, and becoming consciously competent. And now I'm seeing you take those same lessons and using them to grow your business, to help your clients, to teach that to them. How important is conscious competency as a concept and self-reflection for you?
It is the most important thing.
Wow.
It's the thing that I was doing at a young age without realizing it, which was creating a habit for myself that would allow me to develop other areas of my life to just become better. This whole idea of grit, gain resilience in time isn't just about basketball. And it's not just about helping someone get stronger in the weight room. It's about being as resilient as possible as an individual as you can be, to allow you to pursue what it is that you want to do and what you love in life. And I believe that I can utilize through my own experience, because I'm sitting here talking to you today as doing it, that utilizing fitness and my story as vehicles to allow people to find their own grit of their own life and their own journey. That's how I did it. And I'm a living testament to it. But conscious competency, like it's routine and habit of trying to go through something so many times, whether the good or the bad, but just keep trying, keep pushing, keep trying to thread that needle forward of something, because success does not happen overnight. We've learned that. We've all learned that. And looking back as the 26-year-old Barak, it's this interesting behavior that I instilled in myself at 16, 17 years old. And what 16, 17 years old has any business trying to look at it this way? Like, as you know, I wasn't as mature as I am now. I didn't have necessarily all the mentors that I have now. I only had this very, very, very like tunnel visioned idea of trying to play basketball at a competitive level, but also being as competitive with myself as possible, so that when I went to bed at night, I could ask myself, is there any reason that I can blame myself for me not getting better today? Yes or no?
Wow.
And if the answer was yes, I needed to reevaluate. I was telling you earlier that I was wearing so when I was 16, I was diagnosed with spondylolisthesis and 2 hairline fractures in my spine. At 16 years old, it's which is a fancy way of saying I wasn't immobile, but I couldn't really move through my spine. And at 16 years old, it's a pretty rare injury to have. Someone who also was very active and relatively fit. And I was given this Boston overlap brace, plastic hard shell brace to put around for 23 hours a day, while I was also connected to a bone stimulator. So I had 2 little, I connected a bone stimulator on both of my lower halves of my back, had a stimulator in my pocket, and a back brace on. At school, every single day, I was hollow. And the only other hour that I had during that day where I didn't have to wear the brace, like I mentioned earlier, was for showering and stretching. Now, there were times, Charlie, that I would go out with friends on a Friday or Saturday night, and I would come back at 2, 3 in the morning. There's 2 things that I wouldn't do at that point in time. One of them I still do today before getting into bed. One is brushing my teeth. But the second one would be, if it was 2 or 3 in the morning, in silence, I would lie on my floor and I would do the same stretches I did 2 times earlier that day. Because if I got into bed coming home at 2 or 3 in the morning, I would wake up the next morning and I would feel something was wrong. And it seems very minor. Really, it seems minor. You missed 10 minutes of stretching for 1 day out of the 6 months. Yeah, but that's a bad rep. It's a bad rep. Only trying to string together good reps is exactly what I was trying to go for. And I think that's competent. You know, that's the idea of what we're talking about right now, just being able to try to string together good reps. That's kind of how I was thinking about it.
Wow, it's perfect. And there's a real, what you describe, and I think really for me, this was one of the real turning points for me, was when I got this right. And I was 42, but by the time I figured this out, which is, you know, there's these 2 dials in our lives that really drive results: the beliefs, right? The things that we say, think, and do, and then the things that we say and think, and then the things that we do. So it's beliefs and behaviors, and getting those things in alignment build credibility with myself. And when they're out of alignment, like I say I'm a good dad, but I didn't come home Friday night and I drove with my kids in my car when I was loaded. Those don't align. And so I create this integrity gap for myself where I didn't have any credibility with myself. I didn't believe myself. My conscious mind said it. My subconscious mind's going, hey, you're a bullshitter, because that's what you just did isn't consistent with what you were doing at such a young age. And I think really for athletes or high performers or anybody who's trying to pursue something in their life, the importance of building credibility with yourself. When you laid down on your back that night, even if it was for 10 minutes, you were voting, casting a vote, building credibility with yourself about what you were going to do, instead of, you know, saying, hey, I really want to get healthy. I'm going to do everything I can to get well, but I'm going to bed without stretching tonight. That creates an integrity gap, and you wake up with kind of guilt and shame and a little, like, you know, disempowering feeling, and you didn't want to have that. And so, I mean, what I hear is the importance of you building credibility with yourself. Do you relate to that? And does it make sense to you?
It makes 100% sense. I had to put myself in check every day.
Yeah. Check.
You
I
know,
like that.
the rehab sheet that I had, if it had a certain amount of reps and sets and rest time, I'm doing exactly what it says. I'm trusting the people that are putting me in the positions to get me better. This is the process I went through. As a 26-year-old, looking back, I may have rehabbed myself a little bit differently now, knowing what I know today, but that's not the point. The point is I was put in different situations and different environments to get better. And I saw a sports therapist at one point in time. It didn't go as well as I intended, but I was trying to do all the things just to help me. And that sports therapy, by the way, a sports psychologist, was more for the mental side. because it was having a direct effect on my ability to play and clear my head, all these injuries and everything. So, but yeah, I had to put myself in check, because I know that if I didn't, when it came time for me to be cleared by medical professionals and I wasn't ready to play, meaning I was still reporting pain or I was still reporting these compensations, then I would say to myself, what could be the reasons for those things? Oh, I took a month off. Well, that's on me, and I can't get that time back. The only time that's going to come is now another month off of when I should have been playing. And that's regret and guilt that I wouldn't allow myself to go to sleep with. I only wanted to say, Barak, you've done everything that you've been told. You've done it right. You've done it perfect to the T. You've asked the questions you needed to ask. You've gotten the clarification you needed. And at that point, if things still are unclear, then we can reevaluate. But again, it's just like this credibility thing. I really like the way you put that. And I just didn't want to say, this is on you, man. That's it. I didn't want that to happen.
Yeah. Do you see, I see resilience a bit like a muscle. So in strength and conditioning, right, when you're working out with guys in the gym and they're doing weights, they're not building their muscles in the gym. They break them down, they rip them, they tear them down, they stretch them, they strain them. And then when they get out of the gym and they recover properly with hydration and nutrition and rest, their muscles build back up. I think, for me, I was confused that resilience was just getting through the event. I didn't realize that resilience was getting through the event and getting stronger as a result of it, and realizing that I had built a little bit of an internal muscle to get me through the next thing. And it kind of, for me, and it sounds like for you, it made getting through the next thing, I won't say easier, but more predictable. Like I had a little bit more confidence that I could get through the next thing because I got through this thing. I built my resilience muscle. And I know in grit, you've got to have some ideas around what resilience means to you. And is that consistent with how you see resilience, Barak?
I probably couldn't have said it any better. I love the analogy of because it's true when you're when you're working someone out, it's the process. It's not what's happening when they leave the weight room. It's the process. That's how you become resilient. It's a process over time. It's a learning process. Everything's a learning process. It takes time for everyone, no matter what form of adversity each individual. Mine happened to be, and everyone, and I've experienced other forms of adversity unrelated to what we're discussing on this podcast. But for me, the physical adversity that I was dealing with, we're talking about, I'm 26. This story of grit started when I was 16. 10 years. Yeah. 10 years. And I'm still going through it. I don't want to go into all the details, but I had the back injury, and then I dealt with two hairline fractures in both of my tibias, which today are actually still permanent. And the reason they're permanent is because when I was diagnosed with them, I was at a prep school only, I wanted to regain time that I missed off the court when I was getting recruited by colleges, and I had no choice but to play. Those stress fractures just turned into more severe stress fractures. And I was playing this game of on and off for a while. And if I get into a groove of playing a lot of basketball today, I start to feel it, and I've accepted the fact that these stress fractures are in my body, but those are scar wounds that I think tell my story. It's a process. And I probably couldn't have said that any better myself.
Yeah. I've watched you do it. Like I said, I love your journey. I want to get into the other thing, which I heard you, and I don't know if, sometimes our adult eyes looks back and sees things or narrates things differently, but let's talk about self-talk for a second. I grew up listening to myself. I listened to other people's influence over me. I read the things on the pages of my life that they wrote and believed them. And I kept listening to myself. The concept of self-talk really, until I got into mental performance and really started to develop my own 7 elements of optimal performance and looking at self-confidence and how important self-talk is. I have heard you throughout this podcast so far really talk about, even at a young age, what you were saying to yourself. Where did you learn the skill of self-talk? How important is self-talk in resilience and saying the right things to ourselves so that our conscious mind is the goal setter and our subconscious mind is the goal getter? I'll share this with you if you don't know it. Being from Boston, I grew up in Southern Maine, so I was a Red Sox fan, and I watched, regularly. Maybe you're a little too young to have watched the Bill Buckner era, the ground ball that went through his legs in the 1950 World Series. So Golden Glove first baseman Bill Buckner lets a ground ball go through his legs that could have won the Red Sox their first World Series since 1918. 19 days before that game, he gave an interview to a Boston television station where he said, it's a big game. It's the World Series. The dream is you have a good game. The nightmare is you let the game winning run go through your legs by letting a ground ball go through your glove. So, he had supplanted into his mind through this self-talk, an image of something that, did he make it happen? No, but he had kind of pre-thought about what was going to happen when a ground ball came and the event happened. And so I bring that up only because I've heard you talk about self-talk, how you talk to yourself through the adversity. And I really wanted to dig in, where you learned it, if it was somebody that influenced you, how important it is, and how you help people develop healthy self-talk today.
Wow. I think that I'm going to think about this. I'm not entirely sure where I learned it. I've been told my whole life by my brother, by my parents, by every teammate that I've had on every team that I played for, by fans, by parents of other teammates, that I am one of the biggest overthinkers they've ever seen. Not just on the basketball court, but people see me think a lot. Takes me a little while to fall asleep at night because I have a lot going through my head. I have a really sometimes difficult time shutting off my brain because it races to a lot of places, sometimes for the good, sometimes for the bad. I sometimes really appreciate the fact that I talk with myself a lot, but I also think that I overthink a lot of things. When I was in high school and college, I know this is going to sound a little random, but stay with me for a second. When I was in high school and college, we used to have school activities. They'd bring in a hypnotist, and I would always raise my hand to go on stage. Always. I wanted to be hypnotized, and I wanted to do it for the fun. He'd pick 20 students. He'd line them up. They'd sit down. He'd start his session, and you'd have some people within the first 14 or 15 seconds, they are hypnotized. They're gone. They're done. And he would sit them down. Then after 4 or 5, 6 minutes, I would continue, and I would continue with the breathing. I'd continue with the relaxing. I'd continue with the meditation. I was always picked to go on stage, and I was always picked first to get off stage because he would come up to the people that he knew as a hypnotist were not actually getting hypnotized. And it was always me. And I'm weirdly convinced still to this day that I cannot get hypnotized because I'm in my head so deep that sometimes I don't like it. One of my favorite music artists, he actually is my favorite music artist. His name is Russ, R-U-S-S. And he has a book that is called It's All in Your Head. And it talks about how things are all in your head too much and that you need to really focus on not letting everything just overflow into your head and just go and do and not overthink. And I'm a doer. I'm a doer and I'm a thinker. And I didn't learn from anyone specific, to my recollection, how to think and do this self-talk. I think I was born with a gift of being pretty self-aware and understanding who I am, relatively so at an early-ish age as a teenager growing up, understanding sort of where I might fit in. And when I talk about basketball, I'm talking about as a career. And it allowed me to navigate my life differently. But this idea of self-talk has to do with self-awareness.
Yeah.
It has to do with knowing who you are. Who you are. Are you an introvert or are you an extrovert? Do you like being in front of people? Do you not like being in front of people? Knowing who you are as an individual, the things that make you comfortable, things that make you uncomfortable. And I always have conversations with myself about everything that I do. But when I was younger, I would talk to myself about not being the reason that any of this process moving forward would go wrong. Because if I didn't get the job that I wanted one day, or if I didn't have the girlfriend that I wanted one day, it actually might have to do with the fact that I approached this situation here the same way, which was not giving it my all and quitting and not letting something go, going full on with something. So no one's ever asked me that before. You just asked me, Charlie, which is who taught me this. I don't know. I really don't. I just think that I have a weird, I was matured early with my brother and my parents. I was put around people who were always older than me, and it kind of allowed me to see the world a little bit differently. And I think forward a lot. I used to think about college and post-college when I was 16, which is unrealistic, but that's just where my brain goes sometimes. But I've always been an overthinker. People can see it on my face all the time.
I'd say intentional thinker. I mean, thoughts are random, thinking's not. And this is something that I think more people need to understand is thoughts, kind of like leaves going down a river, they come and we can attach or release any of the thoughts that come if we have a thinking strategy. I didn't really understand, that I could have a thought strategy. And I've just, throughout this conversation with you, been so aware. And I think you did answer the question, is you were encouraged at a young age to be self-aware. People had you self-reflect, and you started to think about who you were. And, being ourselves is the hardest job there is. I mean, and most people don't take the time to say, who am I? What are the strengths, what are the character strengths that I have? What are the principles that I live by? What are the interests that I have? Kind of who are the people that I want around me? And, I like to have like a little one, like for me right now, my one word slogan is intentional. Like for the first part of this year, I'm trying to be intentional, is what I want for my life consistent with what I'm doing in my life, making sure I'm intentional about what I say and what I do. But it creates a little bit of a roadmap for us. And that's, so where you learned it, I guess, was from the people that allowed you to be self-aware. How you used it, I think, is the most empowering thing, because you used it to fuel, the existence that you have today. So I appreciate digging into that with you. When people are stuck, Barak, when athletes or people that you work with, or even yourself, feel overwhelmed, and especially, and I cannot applaud grit enough and what it stands for, because I just love it. What are the things that what are your go-to kind of get off the X, kind of make that first move when you start to feel like it's all a bit too much? What are the things that in your training and in your grit protocols, what is it you go to?
Immediately, or as soon as possible, having the ability to accept the situation at hand, because the longer it takes for that to happen, the longer it takes for you to come up with not that it's not saying that it won't happen, but the longer of coming up with that risk and courage to move forward, accepting reality and understanding there is no rewind button, period, end of story. There just is not. There is not. And it doesn't matter. And dwelling about situations buys us short-term therapy. And short-term therapy is never long lasting. It's when things don't go well in people's lives, depending on the severity of what that thing may be, we all have different coping mechanisms for things. And I don't judge any individual for whatever their coping mechanism is, because every individual was raised in a different way that no other person may necessarily know about. And it's unfair for any human to judge any other human individual for the way that they may do things just because you wouldn't do it yourself that way. So for some people, it takes more time. For some people, it takes longer time and shorter time. But finding that place of accepting that this is the situation, and there are only two real options about what you can do when you hit adversity. One,
go ahead. Yeah, I want to hear them.
Yeah. One is asking yourself, why me? Asking him or her, why me? And looking for reasons to complain about the situation, and looking for reasons to dwell on the situation, looking for reasons to delay. It's a natural, it's why did I get injured? Why me? Why did why? And it's not that searching the why is necessarily a bad thing, but I think it's distracting for what the long-term goal may be. And the long-term goal may be, is how do I allow this situation in my life to make me a better individual? This is on the website that I had made for me. This is something that I really believe in. I think about someone who is handicapped and is in a wheelchair and finds a way to use that adversity of being someone who is, in a chair for most of their lives, and use that as their vehicle of doing what they may want to do, a professional basketball player in a wheelchair, or maybe doing events, or maybe being a speaker for other people who are also disabled. That is the biggest gift that they were given, is their disability. That's the biggest gift that they were given. And the adversity that we all face as individuals is the biggest asset in our life. The things that you go through, the hardships that you go through, and the challenges, those are the things that make you better and stronger. And when you're hit with adversity in the face, it's developing, this is what grit is all about, developing this tenacious work ethic, this competitiveness, this bulletproof sense and idea of saying and looking it straight in the face, saying, I'm not going to let you take me over. It's just not going to happen. I'm going to beat you at whatever it is. And that is the process we were talking about of it happening over time. It's not going to happen in that moment, but I encourage and implore individuals to think about the fact that what's happening is meant to be. And now it's up to you to create a reaction of some sort. And that reaction.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
That reaction.
No, that reaction isn't necessarily, it's not you don't push a button and suddenly everything's okay. But it's these, I was talking about these good repetitions that you feed yourself over time that will enable you to press that button maybe a little bit quicker or eventually, and develop that courage to be able to look it in the face and say, game on. That's what I mean.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah. The two things, man, that is, you just put so perfectly what I've heard others try and articulate, which is when you ask better questions, you get better fucking answers. And when you ask why,
oh, we're allowed to swear on this? Oh, okay.
Sure, man.
Well, that's awesome. Oh, okay.
When you ask better questions, you get better answers. And that question, why, your kind of negative kind of inner critic is going to really start to get very loud when you ask why. When you ask, what am I going to do about it? You start to get better answers. And that, I mean, so it's acceptance of reality without judgment. This is happening, good or bad. And then deciding the question I'm going to ask, which is not why is it happening so much as in getting that, what did you call it? That short-term therapy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Short-term therapy.
Yeah. Instead of there, it's what do I want to do about it? And that, so, I mean, if you could just take, if you're listening and you're on the X, you're on that point of adversity, accepting what's happening, not judging it as good or bad, and then asking yourself empowering questions are going to lead you to take empowering actions. That is so solid, man.
And I want to add one more thing.
Yeah.
And saying this, and I just remember, and what you just said made me think about this when I was 16 and 17, when people were saying to me, Barak, just hang up your shoes, dude. Like, just forget it. Like, go find something else. I remember, and I it's the same thing as someone heckling you during a sporting event. You're on the court and someone's talking shit to you. I love that. Like, that's feeding you so much more fuel to press that button I was just talking about, because the only thing you should be saying to yourself at that point is, I can't wait to fucking stick it in your face. And for the people who used to tell me that it's never going to work, yeah, I didn't make it to the NBA. I didn't play professional basketball. I'm not living off of a salary playing for a team. However, all of those experiences that I dealt with as a basketball player being hurt allowed me to find this career that I paid for myself. And to me, I stuck it in their face, because none of them thought that basketball would ever be part of my reality besides me. And I'm doing it. And that is the most rewarding feeling, when you realize that you will die on your own sword, and you didn't give up. You fucking punched adversity in the face. And so the third thing I want to add to what you just said is, like, reminding yourself that this is such a good opportunity to close your mouth and be super, super, super humble on the outside and super, super cocky on the inside, and say, oh, I'm about to get better, because it's so worth it. It's so worth it. And you just humility forever. And you can be cocky on the inside. I believe some of the most talented people in the world that do what they do are for sure cocky on the inside. I think you have to be a little bit delusional and a little bit confident, obsessed with yourself. But applying this humility on the outside, shutting your mouth and just putting your chin down and just paving a way for yourself and just working and grinding and going through that process, you learn so much about yourself.
Wow, that is so powerful and incredible. And when you look at the totality of your life and the influence that you're having and the involvement that you have in professional sports, it's probably working better than you could have ever imagined, because you're so fulfilled. And so, how we use our gifts, there's a drill that we do in resilience training called one door closes, another door opens, and really looking at what we thought in life were these doors closing. And then this incredible door that opened.
Yeah.
I use the example of Trayvon Diggs in the NFL right now, who was a 5-star recruited by Nick Saban to go play receiver at Alabama. Within his first pre-workouts, Nick said, we got 5 All-Americans, kid. You're never going to play wide receiver. I want you to play cornerback. You're talented. You're tall. You're a ball hawk. You got great hands. Play cornerback. He now was just appointed to the Pro Bowl in the NFL and set the record for the Cowboys, 11 interceptions as a cornerback, because door closed as receiver, but another door open, and it's not what he thought he would be, but it's who he was meant to be. Is that cool or what?
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's not who you thought you would be, but who you're meant to be. That's perfect. Yeah. 100%.
Well, I knew I was looking forward to this conversation for a lot of reasons. You're incredibly inspiring, man. And I can't thank you enough for gritting it out with me to find some time to get on here. You know, you are the other Barak. Can you just, and I follow Barak, and we're going to post all of his website and his social media platform, but can you just give people a quick insight into how they can find you, how they can follow you, and get as much of your wisdom as they can, man?
100%. My website is barakswarttz.com, spelled my first and last name. You'll see my idea of grit up there, the film that we discussed throughout this podcast, which is, I think, one of the coolest things that I've ever been a part of. It's 3 minutes of me and the story of how I got to where I am today. And it's a tribute to a lot of hard work and things I've been through, and I'm really proud of it. And so if anyone goes to my website, I would love for you guys to take a look and get some feedback. And on Instagram, I'm at Other Barak, on Twitter, Other Barak, TikTok, Other Barak. I do a lot of fitness content. I'm very, very interactive with the crowd. And I always love to hear from people. I just want to say one other thing, Charlie. I had a high school teammate who I'm still good friends with, and he moved to New York and started working, I want to say, in investment banking. I don't remember what it was. He reached out to me like 3 or 4 years ago. And this was at the point in time I was also making some video content, storytelling about my life. And I'll never forget this. He reaches out to me and he texts me and he goes, I just want to let you know that I've been watching the content you've been putting out for the past 4 or 5 months in the video. I want to let you know that I just quit my job in New York and I'm coming back to Boston to do what I wanted to do. And it's a direct result of me watching your story, and you gave me the courage to go do that. And his story has stuck with me, because what more can I ask for being able to share my story to help someone else go after what they love? And for it to be that focal point for them and that tipping point for them and the inspiration for them to find that courage to do that, it's priceless. You and I are in 2 different businesses, but we both serve one purpose, and that's helping people. And the more people that I can help internally become better and more self-aware, I know that I'm doing my job, period. And I encourage anyone listening to this and any of your followers or anyone who wants another perspective or help with anything, to me, that story will always sit up top for me, because it seems small. Like the kid quit his job and then he went to go work another job. Well, he's actually going after what he loves today, 4 years later. And if I was able to be a little bit of a help with that process, the same way I was able to help Wayne a little bit, I'm helping thread that needle a little bit forward, move that needle forward, then I know I'm serving my greater purpose here. And that to me is the most satisfactory thing about what I do.
Yeah, you're living your best life, and you're definitely in a role that you were supposed to be in. And by the way, I watch that video regularly. I mean, you know, every time I watch it, it inspires me. It's what drew me to you. You got a friend. I'm sure you got lots of them, but you know, you got another friend in the States and me. And I just want to thank you for, you know, connecting with us and sharing your story and being such a bright light in the world, man. You're a good dude.
Charlie, I really, really appreciate that. I'm glad we could connect. And I didn't know from Wayne the connection that you guys had, and meeting him. And also, you know, we're both Boston kids. And so
for sure.
I've known Wayne was, you want to talk about how cool life is. When I was in high school, I was watching Wayne's mixtapes on YouTube because he was one of my favorite players. And 5-10 years later, he's my player. I'm his strength coach. And and just thinking about his career and the place that he's been in, the things that he's gone through. And after this podcast, it's very clear to me how much you care about what you do and being able to help other people and inspire. And it's one of the reasons I was super excited to connect after I saw some of the work that you do. So I'm proud of the work that both of us do. Really.
Yeah, man, for sure. And message me your physical address, and I'm going to get you some pens in the mail. We'll keep.
I'm excited for that.
Yeah, man, we'll give some people the pen to keep writing their stories, dude.
Let's do it.
All right, Barak. Have a great week, man. Talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thank you, Charlie. Yes, sir.
For sure. Bye now.